Hello, everyone. Today, we will talk about how to register a company in India, the documents, and the procedure. Before moving to specific details and document lists, it is important to understand the logic behind the Indian company registration system. It operates on somewhat different principles, and for someone accustomed to administrative procedures in other countries, this may initially seem unusual. Let us start with the legal mechanisms that regulate this area. This is where the key difference between approaches in different countries becomes clear. In many countries, the process is strictly regulated. You submit an application to a government authority, and there is an exact list of documents established by law. There is little room for interpretation. The officer cannot request something beyond that list, and the applicant cannot substitute one document for another. Everything is strictly defined, and any deviation may result in rejection. In India, the situation is somewhat different. In many cases, there is no direct equivalent of the detailed administrative regulations that people are used to elsewhere. Even when guidance exists, it often takes the form of examples rather than an exhaustive list. For instance, the rules may simply require proof of address. This could be a bank statement, a utility bill, or sometimes another document that is not explicitly listed in the regulations. Ultimately, the officer reviewing the application determines whether the document provided is acceptable. Another important feature of the system is that the government does not always handle the registration process directly. A significant part of the procedure is carried out through certified professionals, chartered accountants, company secretaries, and lawyers. In legislation, they are usually referred to as registered professionals or simply professionals. These professionals review the documents, certify them, and upload them to the portal of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Where the legislation leaves certain issues open to interpretation, it is the professionals who determine which documents should be considered acceptable and sufficient. Of course, professionals are not supposed to act arbitrarily. Their decisions must still be based on legal provisions. However, in practice, much depends on the professional's experience and knowledge of recent regulatory developments. As a result, situations may vary. One accountant may accept a particular set of documents, while another may consider it excessive or request additional documents. This is not considered a violation, but rather part of the flexible enforcement approach embedded in the Indian legal system. Therefore, when we say, "Here is the list of documents required to register a company," it should be understood as one of the commonly accepted sets of documents rather than a universal requirement. It is important to remember that there is no single universal list of documents. The required set depends on the status of the foreign applicant and their physical location. In practice, there are three main scenarios. The first scenario is a resident of India. This means a person who stays in India for more than 182 days can prove this status by documents and holds a business visa. The second scenario is a non-resident who is currently in India on a business visa, but does not qualify as a resident. The third scenario is when the applicant is located outside India and completes the registration remotely. If a person is in India under a different type of visa, for example a tourist visa, the procedure is treated as if the person were outside the country. Not only the physical presence, but also the immigration status matters. Let us now go through the specific documents required. We will start with personal documents for each shareholder and future director, assuming they are individuals. The first required document is proof of identity. For foreign nationals who are not Indian residents, the only acceptable identity document is a passport. If the applicant is outside India, a scan of the main passport page with the photograph is usually sufficient. If the applicant has entered India on a business visa, an additional scan of the passport page showing the most recent entry stamp from the border authorities is required. For foreign nationals who hold resident status in India, it used to be sufficient to provide only the Aadhaar card without a passport. In recent years, however, the practice has changed. Registrars increasingly use the passport not only as proof of identity, but also as confirmation that the person has actually been present in India for the required period prior to filing the application. The Aadhaar card alone does not confirm residency status. Therefore, a resident may technically submit only the Aadhaar card, but in many cases an additional request for passport scans will follow. These usually include the main page and pages showing entry and exit stamps for the past 1 or 2 years. To avoid delays, it is generally advisable to prepare both documents in advance: the Aadhaar card and passport scans with the relevant stamps. Although the application may be submitted with Aadhaar alone, attaching passport scans from the beginning is usually the more reliable approach. The second document is the business visa, which is required if the applicant is submitting the application while physically present in India under such a visa. The third document is proof of residential address in English. For residents, this is an address in India, and for non-residents, it is the address in their country of permanent residence. For foreign nationals, whether residents or not, the most commonly accepted proof of address is a bank statement. The statement must contain the applicant's residential address and show recent transactions. The purpose of the transactions is not to verify financial status, but simply to confirm that the account is active and that the personal information associated with it is current. At the time of submission, the statement must not be older than 2 months. Foreign nationals who are not Indian residents normally provide a statement from a foreign bank showing their address abroad. Foreign nationals who hold resident status usually provide a statement from an Indian bank containing their address in India. For non-residents, there is also an alternative option: a consular certificate issued by the consulate of their home country. In practice, a bank statement is usually easier and faster to obtain, since it can often be downloaded from online banking or a mobile application. However, exceptions do occur. For example, a person may not have a bank account in their country of residence, which is rare but possible. A more common issue is that the bank statement may not meet the required format. In some cases, the document does not display both the address and transactions, or it may be available only in the local language. The fourth document required from applicants, future shareholders, and directors is the PAN card, personal account number. Strictly speaking, there is no legal requirement to provide a PAN card at the stage of company registration. However, the electronic application form on the government portal is designed in such a way that it cannot be completed without entering a PAN number. For this reason, all future shareholders and directors must obtain a PAN card before starting the registration process. In any case, it will be required later once the company begins operations. The fifth document is the Aadhaar card, which serves as an identity document and is required only for residents. In addition, passport-style photographs of all shareholders must be provided, taken against a white background. Now, let us turn to the documents required for the company itself. Before starting the registration process, documents for the company's registered office address must be prepared. The first document is proof of the owner of the property at the specified address. A utility bill issued in the owner's name is usually the most suitable document. The main requirement for a utility bill used for this purpose is that it must not be older than 2 months at the time of submission. It is equally important that both the owner's name and the full address are clearly indicated. The document should also be in English, which is not always the case in every city or state. If the bill does not meet these requirements, it is often possible to request the service provider to issue a corrected version. In many cases, they are willing to provide such a document. Alternatively, a different utility bill may be used, for example, a water bill instead of an electricity bill. The second document is a letter of non-objection from the property owner, confirming that the premises may be used as the company's registered office. The key element of this letter is a statement that the owner does not object to a specific company registering its office at the specified property. We usually prepare this letter for our clients using a standard template. The remaining company documents are prepared by us after the registration process begins. Their structure and most of their content are determined by legal regulations. Typically, only personal details, addresses, and company-specific information change. The only section that is drafted individually each time is the description of the company's business object based on the founder's intended operations. The first document is the Memorandum of Association, MOA. The second document is the Articles of Association, AOA. The third document consists of shareholder declarations in Form INC-9. The fourth document includes Director Declarations in Form DIR-2. The fifth document is a signature card used for registration with the Employees Provident Fund, EPF, as an employer. A common question concerns the certification of company documents and copies of personal documents. The law explicitly requires notarization and apostille only when the founders are located outside India and sign the documents there while presenting their identification documents. However, in recent years, officers handling company registrations often request notarized copies, even when documents are prepared and submitted within India. Such requests fall within their discretion. For this reason, the most practical approach today is to prepare the full set of documents with notarization in India in advance. This procedure is relatively simple, does not take much time, and does not involve significant costs, but it helps avoid delays and additional requests from the registrar. At the same time, electronic signatures must be obtained for the future directors, as they will be required to sign electronic documents during the registration process, including the application itself. Certification authorities in India typically verify identity remotely through a video call. Applicants should be prepared to complete this verification. In recent years, the cost of obtaining electronic signatures for non-residents has increased significantly compared with residents, and is currently around $150. When preparing the company documents, the company name must be included, which introduces another important step in the process. In India, the company name plays a particularly significant role. It serves as a unique identifier across the entire country, and must not be identical or even too similar to an existing company name. The name must therefore be approved by the registration authority before the incorporation documents are finalized. This approval constitutes the first stage of the registration process. It is completed before drafting the incorporation documents to avoid having to revise and resubmit them if the name is rejected. Obtaining name approval independently can be difficult because it is not enough to avoid identical names. The registrar also evaluates similarity based on specific internal criteria, which usually require practical experience to interpret. In some cases, name approval may take only 2 or 3 days, while in others it may take up to 2 weeks. This often depends on the authority's workload and key performance indicator related to what is officially described as scrutiny, which in practice often means a rate of rejections. Once all documents are prepared, they must be scanned in good quality so that the text is clearly readable. Particular attention should be paid to utility bills and other documents printed on equipment with lower print quality. After scanning, the complete set of documents is sent to us for a final review. The application and supporting documents are then uploaded to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs portal by a professional from our team together with their mandatory declaration. After that, it only remains to wait for the outcome: the issuance of director identification numbers, the certificate of incorporation, and the company's tax identification numbers. Once these are obtained, it is advisable not to delay certain mandatory post-registration steps that must be completed within specific deadlines. In conclusion, the process ultimately comes down to a simple principle. The better you understand the procedure and the more carefully the document package is prepared, the less time, money, and unnecessary stress the registration will involve. Dealing with the Indian bureaucratic system may not always be the most enjoyable part of starting a business. However, if your goal is to build a successful and sustainable business in India, the time and effort invested in proper company registration will certainly be worthwhile. Follow us to know everything about business in India.